One emperor ruled almost all of India. Kingdom after kingdom had surrendered, some through fear, others through diplomacy. But one man refused. Not because he was stronger, he wasn't. Not because he had a larger army, he didn't. And definitely not because victory seemed likely, because it didn't. His enemy was the most powerful ruler in India, an emperor whose empire kept growing, whose armies seemed unstoppable, Akbar. And yet deep inside the hills of Rajasthan, one king still refused to kneel, even after losing fortresses, even after losing land, even after watching powerful kingdoms submit. What happened next would become one of the most famous battles in Indian history, a battle filled with loyalty, sacrifice, and a horse that would become legendary. Because at Haldighati, history would ask one impossible question. Could one man still resist an empire? After the fall of Chittorgarh, most people believed resistance was over. Akbar had captured one of the strongest fortresses in India. Many Rajput kingdoms had already accepted Mughal rule, and from the outside, the future looked obvious. The Mughal Empire would continue growing, unchecked, unchallenged. Except there was still one problem. Mewar had not surrendered. Its lands were damaged, its power weakened, its strongest fortress gone, and yet submission never came. Because deep in the hills of Rajasthan, someone still refused to bow. Not a king living in luxury, not a ruler protected by giant armies, but a warrior king forced into struggle, living among mountains, constantly moving, preparing for a war many believed he could never win. His name was Maharana Pratap. Pratap was different. At a time when powerful rulers accepted Mughal alliances, he refused. Not because resistance looked easy. It didn't. Not because victory seemed certain. It wasn't. But because surrender to him was unacceptable. And Akbar understood something dangerous. As long as Maharana Pratap remained free, Mewar remained unconquered. And as long as Mewar resisted, others might still believe the Mughal Empire could be challenged. At first, Akbar tried another path. Not war, not invasion, but diplomacy. Yet what happened next made conflict unavoidable. And eventually, both sides began preparing for a battle history would never forget. Akbar understood something important. War against Mewar would not be easy. The land was difficult, the hills unforgiving, and Maharana Pratap was not the kind of ruler who surrendered quickly. So at first Akbar chose another strategy, diplomacy. Instead of sending armies, he sent messengers, peace offers, royal representatives, a simple proposal: accept Mughal authority and keep your kingdom. Many Rajput rulers had already agreed to arrangements like this. Some even became trusted allies of Akbar. From the Mughal perspective, this seemed reasonable. Avoid bloodshed, preserve stability, end resistance peacefully. Except there was one problem. Maharana Pratap refused, again and again and again, not because he hated diplomacy, but because accepting Mughal authority meant something he could not accept: submission. Imagine the pressure. His kingdom was weakened, resources were limited. The Mughal Empire was vastly stronger. Many people likely believed resistance is hopeless, but Pratap stayed firm, even if it meant hardship, even if it meant war. Eventually, Akbar stopped waiting. If diplomacy would not work, force would. A Mughal army began preparing, not led by Akbar himself, but by one of his most trusted commanders, a Rajput prince fighting for the Mughal side, Man Singh. And suddenly, something strange happened. Rajputs would soon fight on both sides, brother against brother, honor against empire. And the road ahead led toward a narrow mountain pass called Haldighati. By 1576, war could no longer be avoided. Akbar wanted Mewar brought under Mughal control. Maharana Pratap still refused. And soon both sides began preparing for battle. On paper, the results seemed obvious. The Mughal Empire was stronger, larger armies, more resources, experienced commanders, and leading the campaign was Man Singh, a trusted general of Akbar. And something made this battle even stranger. He was Rajput too. Soon Rajputs would fight Rajputs, on opposite sides. Meanwhile, Maharana Pratap prepared differently. His army was smaller, resources limited, victory uncertain. But he had something difficult to measure: loyalty. Warriors willing to fight even against impossible odds. Because surrender still wasn't an option. And then both armies moved toward a narrow mountain pass. Haldighati, a place of steep hills, dusty ground, and little room to maneuver. Perfect for an army trying to challenge a stronger enemy. On the morning of battle, thousands prepared for war. And at the center of it all rode a warrior king, on a horse history would never forget. June 18th, 1576, Haldighati. Dawn broke over the narrow mountain pass. Dust filled the air. Warriors tightened armor. Horses waited nervously, and two armies prepared for a battle neither side would forget. On one side, the Mughal army, larger, better equipped, led by Man Singh, a commander trusted by Akbar. On the other stood Maharana Pratap, outnumbered, outmatched, but still refusing to surrender. Then the battle began, and almost immediately, Haldighati exploded into chaos. Rajput cavalry charged forward, spears lowered, war cries echoing through the valley. Dust swallowed the battlefield. Steel clashed. Men disappeared into confusion. And somewhere in the middle of it all rode Maharana Pratap, mounted on his loyal horse, Chetak. Historical accounts describe Pratap fighting aggressively, pushing directly toward the Mughal center, toward one target, Man Singh. Because if the commander fell, everything could change. And then in the middle of battle, something extraordinary happened. A charging horse, an impossible attack, and a moment that would become legend. In the middle of battle, Maharana Pratap saw an opportunity. Ahead stood the Mughal command, and somewhere near it was Man Singh. If the commander could be reached, the battle itself might change. Mounted on Chetak, his loyal blue-gray horse, Pratap charged forward, straight through chaos, through dust, through confusion. Historical stories describe something unforgettable. As Pratap pushed toward the Mughal center, Chetak leapt forward, placing his front legs onto the elephant, carrying Man Singh. For a moment, horse and elephant stood face to face. And suddenly, everything felt possible. Except the Mughal army held. Numbers began to matter. Pressure increased. And slowly, the battle turned difficult. Rajput forces began losing ground. Confusion spread. Momentum shifted. And survival became the priority. Then another act of loyalty changed everything. One of Pratap's closest warriors, Hakim Khan Sur, continued fighting fiercely. And according to historical tradition, others risked everything to help protect their ruler. Because by now, everyone understood. If Maharana Pratap fell, Mewar's resistance might end forever. The battle was slipping away. Maharana Pratap was wounded, and escape seemed almost impossible, until one horse made a final choice that history would never forget. By now, the battle had turned against Maharana Pratap. The Mughal army still held. His forces were exhausted, and survival had become urgent. Because if Pratap died here, Mewar's resistance might die with him. Some historical traditions describe Pratap as wounded, yet still refusing to stop. And carrying him through chaos was Chetak, loyal, fast, still running despite injuries of his own, through dust, through danger, away from the battlefield. Then came the moment people still remember centuries later. According to tradition, while escaping pursuit, Chetak made one final leap, crossing a stream despite being badly injured, long enough to save his king. But moments later, the legendary horse collapsed, its strength finally gone, after carrying Maharana Pratap to safety. And suddenly this battle became more than war. It became a story of loyalty, sacrifice, and survival. But here's the strange part. Even after all this, the biggest question remained unanswered. Did Akbar actually win? Or did Maharana Pratap refuse defeat, even after Haldighati? On paper, the Battle of Haldighati looked like a Mughal victory. The battlefield remained under Mughal control. Maharana Pratap had retreated, and Akbar's empire still stood powerful. Except history is rarely that simple, because something unexpected happened. Maharana Pratap never surrendered. Even after Haldighati, he kept resisting, kept fighting, kept rebuilding, and over time he regained much of Mewar. Which raises an interesting question. If an emperor wins the battlefield but never breaks his enemy, is that truly victory? Because centuries later, people still remember Haldighati not only for war, but for resistance, for sacrifice, and for a king who refused to kneel. And somewhere inside that story stands one unforgettable image, a wounded ruler, saved by the loyalty of one horse, Chetak. So what do you think? Did Akbar truly win Haldighati, or did Maharana Pratap prove that survival itself can be victory? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy cinematic history, subscribe for the next chapter of India's greatest battles. Like and subscribe Crescent and Steel.